I don't need to remind you who Sweet Baby Inc. is, you already know who they are, but the ongoing battle against their image in the games industry has been something that has grown over time. They messed up a lot of games, which they claim they haven't at times, but now it turns out that Kim Belair, that's the co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc., kinda just told the truth recently about the matter that, actually, yes, they do in fact do exactly what you think they do. And I'll tie this not only to the Sweet Baby stuff, but Halo as well, but this comes from DEIDetected.com and it's titled, Kim Belair confirms what gamers always suspected, addresses the Sweet Baby Inc. backlash. This was written by the Writing Raven. As you can see there on the right, she's half of Gothic Therapy alongside Master of the TDS. They've been exposing Sweet Baby Inc. for a really long time now, so all credit goes to them for what has been found here. But Kim was in a talk about games and how they're made at an event called Game Changers 2025. That name, Game Changers, probably sounds familiar if you saw the Game Awards last year as well. You might also remember this guy who won that very first award for the Game Changers at the Game Awards last year. That's Amir Sadvat. That's this guy on screen right now. Amir was paraded at the Game Awards as this savior of game jobs in the industry, but after he won his award, it was clear that something was amiss. Turns out Amir, as seen here, is actually kind of a big wig at Tencent, you know, the Chinese mega company that recently bought up Ubisoft pretty much, and then turned it into Vantage Studios to name just one thing they did amongst many other things. But YouTuber Moriarty, as seen here, made a post about Amir and Game Changers right after he won that award last year. I promise this will all tie back to Sweet Baby Inc., but it's very important to understand exactly how all of this ties together and why it feels so disingenuous. Anyway, the Game Awards outright refused for a long time to acknowledge the layoffs that were in the industry, oftentimes ignoring it completely as thousands of developers would get laid off making games that pushed ideology or just typical corporate nonsense, like bigwig millionaires sacrificing their talent to keep their jobs. I need to tell you that the regular developers that got thrown to the wayside all the time were having that done to them to save the people at the very top who fed on the actual profits of these games that were being made. Take your pick, Electronic Arts, Microsoft, Sony, doesn't really matter, they've all done this. It's a big problem, I know. Besides the obvious ideological problem that is in games right now, the other equally if not bigger problem is just the gross mismanaging and over monetization of video games in general that has crippled games for a really long time. So Amir Sadvad was chosen as the Game Changer recipient for a reason. He was effectively a propaganda piece put in place by corporate higher-ups in order to, well, I guess you could say, clean their image. They even shared, as seen here, that Amir made spreadsheets about layoffs and the effects. Wow, a whole spreadsheet, what a guy. But credit where it's due, Amir did help developers get new jobs to a degree, and that is a good thing that should be celebrated. He also allowed them all to pool their info into these spreadsheets as seen here as well too. So Game Changers, which is interviewing Kim Belair here by the way, is supported by the same sort of thing. I think the way that Moriarty put it back in December 2024 is perfect. He said this about Amir Sadvat and Game Changers as a group, which reads as follows. They brought this man up on stage and said he made a spreadsheet when no one else could do anything. They paraded him in front of the people who literally fired everyone. It's a room of the people who fired the people you say you're helping. They awarded you for it. Yeah, it's kind of tone deaf. It's like if the mob bosses put up their own guy in front of City Hall and said, this is the guy who will speak for us. Oh, great. You mean the guy who works for the same guys who fired everyone in the first place? Well, that's kind of weird. And then you gave him specifically an award for this? Yeah, that doesn't feel artificial at all. But Moriarty said more. A large chunk of audience is people who chose to lay off people a month after Christmas. They're planning to lay off people right now. They're going to do it next month. They gave you an award for providing volunteer services to their McKinseyan sacrifices. They clapped for you. The whole thing is just kind of weird, honestly. But as Moriarty then points out here too, that Amir Sadvad of Game Changers also worked at Amazon Studio of all places. The very same Amazon that just recently laid off thousands of their staff, which affected places like even Twitch. As seen here from the CBC recently, Amazon laid off roughly 14,000 employees for, get this, AI instead. So again, there's your context before we even get into the Sweet Baby stuff. That this Game Changer event that works with the industry supposedly is also interviewing Kim Belair here and labeling her as a victim of cancel culture and misinformation. And now that you know what Game Changers actually is and how they're basically kind of a mafia goon LARPing as an industry friend, we can now get into what Kim Belair said, because Now that you know this, it's going to recontextualize everything. So this game changer interview was about an hour long. Don't worry, I won't make you sit through all of it. However, I will say at one point, the interviewer actually mispronounces Alan Wake 2 as Alan Waker, so that was an interesting mistake that was left in. But anyways, writing Raven of Gothic Therapy condenses what Kim Belair said in this interview to make it more digestible, which reads as follows. Belair describes Sweet Baby Inc.'s direct involvement in Spider-Man 2 over roughly 3 years, focusing on the storylines for Kraven and Harry Osborn, and said that her team helped shape the narrative beats and character work for Alan Wake 2. Taken together, these remarks contradict the company's long-standing public stance that it serves only as a consulting firm. I also exposed part of this already in the past, and before I get into this, hey, Remedy Entertainment, in case anyone there is watching this, don't try to copyright this video the same way you tried with my other video where I talked about you guys either. Because you did try to copyright me when I brought this up last time, and funnily enough, they then tried to copyright the footage in that video showing Alan Wake 2, which was taken from a legal copy of the game that I bought myself and recorded myself, by the way, and I put it in the video by myself. And to prove that, so nobody can say that I'm lying somehow, here as you can see, I made a post about this in November 2024, where very specifically, as you can further see here, the Old Gods of Asgard, that's the band that plays in Alan Wake 1 and 2, they actually tried to copyright my video when I was specifically exposing Remedy for using Sweet Baby Inc.'s influence to race swap characters like Saga Anderson, proving that people like Kim Belair had a lot more influence than they were going on with. And by the way, I didn't even use the music in the video either from the game, just actual gameplay. Sorry, cutscene. Because Alan Wake has a lot of cutscenes, but they really did try this, and they lost, by the way, too, because that video is no longer copyrighted, by the way. But this is the kind of people who work with Sweet Baby. They try to use censorship to block people from knowing the truth. I mean, by the way, look at Remedy right now. They lost a lot of money on their quarterly earnings. Gee, I wonder why. But here's an actual excerpt from a conversation with the director of Alan Wake 2, where they had spoke specifically about Kim Belair's involvement with Alan Wake 2's story and characters, and this comes from GameDeveloper.com. As you can see, some will try to play defense for Kim Belair, saying she did not race swap or cause the race swap of Saga Anderson in Alan Wake 2, despite the fact that as seen here in Quantum Break, where Saga Anderson also shows up, by the way, that Saga standing here, as you can see, looks absolutely nothing like Saga Anderson in Alan Wake 2. So let's not play dumb here. All of Remedy's games are interconnected to some degree too, so again, let's not play dumb, but it was wild to see Kim Belair finally admitting that yes, she and her team definitely did in fact have tangible effect and power over the very games that they were consulting on, because they absolutely did. Look at Spider-Man 2018 versus Spider-Man 2. They couldn't have made it more obvious which of these two games Sweet Baby worked on. But seeing people run defense for them like Game Changers has with this article is beyond ridiculous, especially with that added context, by the way, as to who they really are and what their mission is and who funds them. But Kim does say at one point during the interview, which is this: there are thousands of videos about us, but of those people, no one has written to us to say, hey, can I just ask a couple of questions about how this works? And that's patently false, Kim, too, when you know that, because Master of the TDS and even like Smash JT have tried reaching out to you multiple times for interviews or just emails alone. TDS, for example, literally showed the email he sent you guys just last week on his own live stream. You can't claim that people don't want to talk to you when it's anything but. I think content creators would actually love to talk to you. I just don't think you want to talk to them, because if you do, the tsunami of common sense will be probably suffocating. And if you want more non-BS content on games, consider liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thank you. But Kim also claims that gaming is a battlefield right now, which, yeah, I agree. Go look at what's happening with Halo right now to see what I mean as well. But she says that developers should instead fight for their baby, as she puts it. Here's that part here, by the way, where she says that devs should fight for their ideas even if they don't make the money, which is a wild take to have, especially since, again, she's being interviewed by literally Game Changers of all people, which was made by the very industry types that frankly only care about money in the first place. So, a little tone deaf, but alrighty then. But this next part was really interesting from Kim Belair, where she talks on wokeness, okay? Here's what she said. When people fight against wokeness, what they're really doing is fighting against progressiveness, and in a way, fighting against themselves. Yep, I disagree with that one wholeheartedly, Kim. I don't recall ever thinking to myself, gee, I really want my Spider-Man games to just suck. Or what if there was a consulting company that could work on a Batman Arkham spin-off game where Batman gets shot in the face by Harley Quinn? Or I wish I could play a game called Alan Wake 2, where Alan's no longer the main character and objectively has far less gameplay and screen time than Saga Anderson instead, who's now again race swapped randomly. Yeah, I don't think I ever once wanted any of those things at all came in my games, like not even a little bit. I do this YouTube thing to push back against these sort of things, and the amount of hate that I get online tells me I'm doing the right thing. I already know there's people who will publicly attack me but be nice in my DMs, but it is what it is. I'm not opposed to diversity in games. For crying out loud, Mass Effect and Dragon Age are some of my favorite game series of all time. Well, not Veilguard, but you get the point. So claiming that people don't want diversity is not really the issue here. It's like the Halo meme thing that happened recently, you know? Let's talk about that for a bit now to make my point even further. The too long didn't read version, GameStop announced an end to the console wars, then they made memes of Master Chief, the White House jumped in, made their own memes of Trump and Chief, shaking hands and more. It made a lot of people really angry, and my previous video covers a lot of that too already, but there were a lot of people getting mad that Halo was being used by the conservative government to make jokes or make a political statement. Interestingly so, none of these people, for example, said much of anything when other franchises were also being used to push agendas either. One that comes to mind actually is Marvel Comics. Remember back in the COVID era when the whole vaccine thing was a really big topic of discussion? Should you take it or not? If you don't, you're putting others at risk. I personally never took the vaccine, by the way, and no amount of bullying was going to make me ever take it either. But weirdly enough, places like Marvel use their comics to push this sort of slop to entice users to get their vaccine shots. As seen here, where two characters in their books talk about taking their vaccines. Or this really cringe-inducing image of an old man smiling, kind of like a weirdo, showing you his bandage on his arm in an Avengers comic no less. Of course, the same people who claim that Halo is being used as political propaganda against left-leaning individuals were totally silent when Marvel used their IP to push actual bodily decisions upon their citizens. Yet they never really got outraged by that, did they? It's only really ever a problem if the thing disagrees with them after all in the end. You may have also noticed how whenever Halo added nonsense like pride colors, these same types of people never really batted an eye. Like, look at this rainbow armor in Halo. Why would Spartans ever wear this in that universe? They're genetically engineered warriors meant to protect humanity. It's just goofy. I know Spartans have colors to their armor like green or blue, but a rainbow, like a colorful rainbow, imagine actual Navy SEALs like in like our world. Unironically running into battle, just sticking out like sore thumbs looking like rainbows. Like, be serious. Or this guy named Potato McWhiskey, who said this about the Halo memes, yeah, I'll never consider working with Microsoft on anything ever again, and I'll be citing this tweet unless they do something about it, and then this guy comes in with the Black History Month armor and Halo saying, easy there, buddy, we don't want Halo getting too political there, do we? I mean, the memes write themselves. But it is funny seeing these people get so angry over things when the politics are just not in their favor. Like, what happened, guys? I thought you guys liked politics in your games. Aren't you for these sorts of things? Oh, you're not now, because it's conservative now. Well, imagine how players then feel seeing stupid nonsense all of the time for the last few years. You guys are feeling like 1% of what we, the players, have been going through for literal years, and the moment you get a little pushback, you clutch your pearls and cry. This is not the game industry I know and love. This is like a bunch of hypocrites that are masquerading as caring about games when they don't. I wouldn't even be surprised if Sweet Baby to some degree worked on those Halo skins or something with Microsoft there, because none of that would really surprise me at all. I saw people also asking me to respond to Jamie Greisemer on Twitter because he was making fun of the game outlets who were mad about the Trump meme stuff. So I talked about him in my other video, but he did respond to me between this, so now I can properly address this in a new video because the other video was done already, my bad. So when Halo came out, it was in 2001 amidst 9/11, and it was, well, a volatile time, all right. Anyways, I retweeted Jamie with his response, but he added more context, which reads as follows. No, I was not talking about the symbolism of the games. I was talking about the unfortunate context into which the first game was released. The Covenant were not a historic or religious allegory. And it's good that he added more context here because this now means that the personification of Halo as a franchise will hopefully now not be weaponized further by either side of the argument. It's obvious that Halo has inspirations from conservative-minded values or Christianity. As I said in my previous video on Halo, it doesn't mean that everyone who worked on it was conservative, because of course not, that's not true. But what I also said in that video too is that it's likely the people who worked on Halo originally were in fact people who were more centrist, if you will, which is an ideology kind of lost today, let's be real. At least when it comes to being online, everyone wants you to either be left or right, when in actuality, I think most sensible people fall somewhere in the middle like usual. Jamie seems to be one of those guys, because again, while he confirms that the Covenant were not meant to be this religious allegory, he also made fun of the other side. I mean, the game journalists too. So obviously, games journals were mad about Halo, and this all ties to Sweet Baby baby, I promise, but Jamie responded to that as well and said this. But also, the left has been driven so insane that this tactic is going to work. I fully expect, actually the Flood were the real heroes of Halo within the week. And he then said, the real Gravemind has never been tried, which is crazy to say, but I mean, come on, that is funny. But look, the point I'm making here is that Jamie is showing that in actuality, people like him working on Halo that aren't actually, either side of the aisle politically, which again, people like Jamie are kind of what game developers used to be like. Just developers. It wasn't about the agenda. And I agree with them that I do wish that games just stop pushing this sort of thing on either side full stop. Many times on this channel, I've said that stuff like Helldivers 2 should never have pro-conservative symbolism, nor should it have liberal either. I don't want any MAGA helmets or rainbow capes, I just want Super Earth, because I hate to break it to people like Sweet Baby or the people hating on Halo memes, but these places, they are not the real world. They do not in fact need to represent the real world in any single way. Like, Halo is not our world, it's Halo, because I don't recall there being something called the Flood invading our Earth and our reality, or there being like 7-foot-tall supermarines driving jeeps with miniguns in space around here. The best we got is like people in Florida wrestling like gators maybe. Our world is also not like how Sweet Baby Inc. per se presents the world of New York City in Spider-Man 2. If you really take Spider-Man 2 as a supposed representation of our real world, it's a bad one at that, not to mention our real world doesn't have superheroes clinging to walls and stuff, but that's beside the point. But firstly, none of the main characters in Spider-Man 1 or even 2 even have New York accents. At least Tom Holland in the movies does the accent when he plays Spider-Man. Secondly, everything in Insomniac's NYC, it just feels filtered, neutered, and stripped of any rough edges. Which, let's be real, is the complete opposite of what New York City is as a real place. Instead, they turn New York City in Spider-Man 2 specifically, with the help of Sweet Baby Inc., into a propaganda piece. There's rainbow stuff littered everywhere, but of course that rainbow stuff doesn't exist in the Middle Eastern version of Spider-Man 2, as seen here by the way, which is true actually. That got shared like crazy by the way back in 2023. Even Reddit, as seen here, talked about it, and let's zoom in further so you can see more. So here you can see that Miles here in a Middle Eastern streamer's playthrough of the game, and the LGBT dialogue that should be there is just gone. And another picture from that guy's same stream shows that the LGBT flags that are present in Spider-Man 2 when bought in the West conveniently are removed in the Middle Eastern version of the game. Which, let's be real, that's not very inclusive of Insomniac nor Sweet Baby to do, and it shows how it's all just a performative dance for these people in the end. Because if you actually really cared about the representation you say, you wouldn't remove the very representation from your own game. But they did it because they wanted that Arab money, which I had to say, my bad, but you get the point. As DEIDetected.com says here in that first article that I referenced, Kim Belair believes that Sweet Baby did the best that they could, which I'm not denying that they tried, but the results across each game were, well, not very good. Spider-Man 2 sold half of 2018's. Alan Wake 2 has been limping on, barely turning a profit, not to mention the other game, FBC Firebreak, which is doing terribly as well from Remedy 2, and Kill the Justice League, for example. Well, we know how that one turned out, didn't we? It was a live service game that's already technically offline, so that one didn't work either. But I think it's very interesting and frankly hilarious that Kim would openly admit that, hey, actually, all the things these people accuse us of are actually pretty on the money. Well, thanks, Kim. Nice of you to say that, but that isn't really going to be the win you think it is. And when it comes to things like Halo, I think we're finding out very quickly that a lot of people are mad when their favorite franchises are used for propaganda, which, yeah, I think anyone with common sense is against that too, no matter what side of the aisle. What's even funnier, however, is that a bunch of websites, like I said, made articles about how Bungie devs and whatnots are against these memes that the White House posted. Here's PC Gamer reporting on it, and Jamie, again, that lead gameplay developer on Halo, swooped in to say people just hear what they want to hear, which can be true of both sides, either conservative or liberal, and he's right about that. But a user would reply to Jamie on that PC article that apparently said they talked to all these Halo devs and says this. This is why it's not good to talk to news outlets. They spin everything, but Jamie would then say back, I did not. They just scraped through Twitter and Totillo's Substack. Oh, so lovely then. So Jamie just confirmed that PC Gamer didn't even reach out to him then. They're just putting words in his mouth. Interesting. So the guy who thinks that both sides of the political aisle are insane and wants nothing to do with them is having his words weaponized by either side too. And I do apologize to Jamie if I misrepresented him in any way, or the Covenant and all that. That wasn't my intention to do, but I doubt that PC Gamer will do the same for him. They will just instead ignore it and claim that he's against players because, well, it's games journalism. Look, there's a lot of problems out there, like I said, from gross over monetization and then some, but it can't be denied that this moronic push for politics or right in gaming is kind of annoying. And I am with Jamie in the sense that none of this stuff should be in games. Halo was made by people that were all over the political spectrum, and it was great. Halo now is made clearly by leftists, and wow, it failed not once but 3 times in a row. Remind me again why it's a bad idea to have only one kind of people making a game. Oh, they all say the same thing. Well, how about that? Sounds like Sweet Baby Ink, by the way, too. And to end this video, to show you how stupid this all is, Actman posted an excerpt from Jamie that he was against the ice meme, which yes, he didn't like that, and that is right. But what's funny and unexpected was seeing Marty O'Donnell in Actman's own comment section posting another thing that Jamie said, which reads, "The Democrats in Congress refuse to cheer for a kid that beat cancer. You wouldn't celebrate the Israeli hostages being freed. You complain that the Butler assassin missed Trump's head and then called them effing loons. Jamie is something else, guys." But that's what I'm saying. Compare Jamie and how he has his hands rated E for everyone pretty much compared to someone like Kim Belair. You can't really compare these old head legacy devs to these seemingly newer ones, because the older devs made great games that just stood on their merits alone and didn't alienate anyone, because everyone loves Halo, or at least the older games anyways, and didn't matter what side of the aisle you were on. Everyone loved Halo, and that proves the point. While Kim is being interviewed by Game Changers of all things and then claims that everything is woke and you're against it, that means you're against progress now. Like, the duality of game developers here is incredible, and I know that there are more devs like Jamie that are out there. I know, because I talked to them privately. Hello, if you're watching this, by the way, I hope you're doing well. But these websites and slop like Game Changers are all ran by the same people, and I will continue to push back because we need to, guys. Otherwise, they're just going to make Master Chief wear whatever the next political hot propaganda topic thing ends up being in the future too. If you ask me, if you just want everything to be better, just remove your politics from your games, like all of it. Right, left, upside down, I don't care. Just remove all of it. Return games to how they were in the 90s and the early 2000s, because they were objectively so much better and everyone could enjoy them and nobody was fighting about them. Besides, maybe, this character's stats are better than this one, or this character's better in a fighting game than this one. Like real game stuff that, is like fun to talk about, not just like this developer wants all white people gone, or this developer hates everyone who isn't this skin color. Like nonsense like that is just annoying, dude. But enough of this if you ask me. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.